Today, we are going to talk about some common pitfalls an entrepreneur should avoid or should keep an eye on for a greater success. There are many, nowadays, these things you can ask ChatGPT, but the best thing is that if somebody can share his or her experience of what pitfalls they have seen and how can you avoid. And I'm going to share some of the pitfalls I have seen both in my own journey as well as in the journey of the executives I work with when I coach people or when I deal with people. I like to learn from people's stories, their life stories, their successes, but most importantly, their failures, so that we can share and we can help each other. Because I tell you, in my humble opinion, you learn more from your failures than you learn from your successes. So one of the major pitfall I have seen, especially nowadays in the tech environment, in the high tech environment, is that you have you have people, lots of youngsters who are coming in the high tech industry, and they just have, they shoot for the moon and they talk about big numbers because they only have seen the successes, they haven't seen the failures. So one of the major pitfalls is that basically people do straight line revenue thinking that, okay, if I'm making $1 million a month this month, that means it's going to continue in a straight line and I'm going to make $12 million in a year. So that's kind of the straight line forecasting they do. They extrapolate, they build their performa based on a small success without looking at, the reality of life, that life is never a straight line. It goes ups and downs. So I was talking to a tech entrepreneur who was having a great success in the beginning, and they were making $3 million a year. When I say making, they use this word making, even though that was their revenue. And I asked them, when they used the word making, I said, what do you mean by making? Because that's another very important pitfalls today's entrepreneurs ignore. I have seen this over and over. They use the word very commonly, oh, we made $3 million. Reality is, they may have not made even $1 million. They may have not even made anything. They may have lost. And I'll explain you, in further discussion, that how making and net profit have a major difference. So a lot of entrepreneurs use making as mean revenue. So their revenue is really that. And then the other thing is, which our major point is, that extrapolating the revenue on a straight line. So I've seen many young entrepreneurs, when they have a short success, they multiply that to years, and then they kind of start presenting and thinking and believing that they are millionaire or billionaire, not even a millionaire. They say, oh, they have $1 billion company. The reality is that they're just extrapolating their number to the year and then multiple years. So I've seen some tech entrepreneurs that they have been talking about, oh, I made $3 million this year and this month, and I'm going to have the whole year, my revenue is going to be $50 million, because they multiply the months and then they add the factor, and then they say, okay, well, now my revenue is this, now I'm going to do use a 10 factor of valuation, and then now it's $50 million becomes $500 million, and now here you go in all the media. So and then and unfortunately, nowadays people can buy certain media outlet as a, as an article, and then they present themselves that way. Now, the other pitfall is that misunderstanding of the liabilities. They talk about, when they say making mean revenue, they may have lots of liabilities, and they don't realize that, okay, yes, they had a revenue of $3 million a month, but what was the obligation? Because they didn't realize what their obligations is. There were obligation in terms of all of their supply base, their materials, their services, their transportation, their supply chain, and most importantly, their legal costs, because people are in very kind of risky business and there's a lot of legal ramifications, and they don't realize there could be huge legal ramification, and then there could be huge supply chain costs, subcontractor costs, and they look at the pricing model without really looking at their entire business model. And I've seen them, because these are a lot of very young entrepreneurs who have great success, and they see, oh, our pricing is great, and they go out and compete in the market. And then another very important and big cost, these guys spend lots and lots of money on social media marketing and, basically on digital ads. There are a lot of people who advertise on social media like Facebook and Twitter and what have you, and they don't realize that that cost is going to all add up. I have seen many companies going under because they have, number one, very false extrapolation pro forma on their revenue, and then they have a very very faulty calculation on of their back end costs. And that's the reason I'm keep saying, please make sure you keep an eye on the front end. It's important. When you divide, then you can conquer. So that's the reason I always divide the company into two halves, the front end and the back end, because a lot of entrepreneurs are very front end focused. They don't even have the experience in the back end, because back end mean operations, back end mean accounting, finance, legal, HR, vendor management, supplier quality engineering, supplier quality assurance. That's what all back end mean. And then I have seen entrepreneurs who have basically a very strong front end. They have very strong sales skills. They can sell almost anything because they are using lots of promises and digital media. And then they fail in execution because they didn't have a good back end. Because promise is one thing, but you gotta really have very strong operation team and very strong purchasing and supply chain and legal and HR team to keep feeding the machine. Unless you really keep feeding the machine, I'm not saying you always have to have all these resources internally. Matter of fact, I am actually the other way around. I believe do the best, outsource the rest. If you believe you are very good in selling, sales, and marketing, that's fine, do that. But then make sure you have right partners, and then you have right people to keep vetting those partners. People who are constantly going out and checking procedure and policies and the product and services of what you are actually going to ship to your customer, because you are the one who made promise to the customer. They didn't make promise to the customer. They only know what you told them, and now you may have hired them in haphazard without vetting properly, and now you may not be able to deliver. So many companies fail because a they have a wrong forecasting. Then they, on top of forecasting, they didn't realize the true cost, because they're saying making. Reality is, I have seen a company who was making $3 million. I'm using the word making. They got me. They have a revenue of $3 million, but they were spent almost one third on digital media marketing or advertising. So they were very happy. Oh, we every penny we spend, we're getting 3 pennies back. Really? Then how about fulfillment cost? Yes, you spend $1 million and you get a $3 million revenue. But then about now your costing has to be such, your pricing has to be such that it has all those, you know, um, all those expenses covered. Now it means you're spending one third, which is very high. You're spending one third, but you're very excited. Oh, we got, every dollar we are turning three times that we got $3 back. Okay, it means you spend one third of your revenue on advertisement, marketing, very high marketing budget. They didn't realize it. They were actually happy. Now, the other thing is they have to do fulfillment, and now there's a fulfillment cost. There is supply chain cost, there is subcontract cost, there is, of course, material and production cost. And then after all that, there was some legal cost, which they absolutely had no idea. And I've seen many companies going under that way. Okay. So Please make sure when when you're an entrepreneur and you have a revenue coming, make sure that your pricing model is correct, that whatever you are, you are promising you can deliver, and yet you have a margin, a healthy margin. So many entrepreneurs ask me, what should be my healthy margin? What should be the cost? I tell them, don't just come up with the cost or price. Make sure you first figure out your total cost of ownership. You have to have a cost of ownership. Once you figure out your total cost of ownership, including your, you know, legal and other marketing and everything else, all of your expenses, and then you put your margin, because then you have cost of your own internal, operations and other things, and then you have your margin. So basically, it depends. What should be your margin? It depends on your industry. Are you in the high tech, high risk industry? Are you in really consumer industry? Are you in software? Are you in services? It all depends. So that really is some discussion you have to have with your team and your, competitors. Maybe if you know what competitor is doing, are having a good consultant who has seen all these things and who can advise you that what is your true cost and what would be your true margin. Okay, and then other pitfalls I have seen is um, the lifestyle. I've seen people getting, started getting revenue, and without realizing how much they actually, keeping, because they have all those costs, they start buying very, you know, expensive cars and expensive toys, and having, business class, and having suits, boots, and and living in a, very expensive condos and all that. Now they're spending all that money without realizing that they are really truly not millionaire. Forget about billionaire, because their cost of delivery may be even higher than their revenue. So it's not just good to have a revenue. It's very, very important to have healthy revenue that give you reasonable profit. And then you should have a spending. And that's the reason it's good to really keep both separate. You have just started a company. Good thing if you have a success, but make sure you stay humble. I mean, take many examples. Take an example of Warren Buffett. I mean, he still drive a very, very old car, live in a small house. Take example of many successful entrepreneurs. They actually are very humble, and not humble just by their words, but also their livings. So I've seen people going out of business because they have way overspent. There are many examples. I have an example of a real estate entrepreneur who was growing very fast, and we were all shocked that he, with his wife, they had a partnership, and they were actually buying properties left and right, and they were very lucky that they got some funding, some private equity funding, as well as some, some banks funding, because it was a real estate. People thought it's less risky, but and then they built an amazing lifestyle. So, but a concept of a building to actually building a building and renting and profiting is a totally different thing. I met another real estate developer. Now I'm going to give you real estate example, which is much safer industry, but you could also have lack of experience, and you can have many pitfalls there. So I met with two other real estate developers just in last week, who were actually trying to sell their portfolio. Come to find out that they were very excited. They got the approval. First of all, they got the wrong approval because they made a lot of commitment to the town and cities, that basically they have lots of commitments they don't need to have. They should have negotiated that. And now they basically have private equity firms, as their partners, who actually bought the land with them, and they have to pay them certain amount, which is a very high interest rate. And now they're trying to sell the project because they can't build it, because when they want to build it, it is a time frame, and they have investors who they are, who they are paying, double digit interest rate, and then they're very excited. A lot of time people get very, very excited. Oh, we got this project approved. Now, does it have a right approval? What did you commit? And then at the same time, they say, oh, yeah, we got the funding. Come to find out, their funding is extremely expensive. So you can have a project, and if you got the funding at a wrong price, what is going to happen? Because whoever is giving you funding, they know that you are a risky, proposition, so they're going to give you much higher rate. And that's the reason, honestly, I don't get excited. I don't encourage people to go to, private investors are very risky, funds are very high interest rate funds, because those are the one who's going to actually break you. So before you can build, a good,
Unknown caller.
before you can build this good story, you lost it. You lost it, and now you're scrambling to sell your project. And now here's the problem. Now, since you bought the project at the wrong price, you got you have a commitment to the town who approved the project, and you have committed too many things, and now you have to deliver those. Now, if you can't build that, you are selling it. And now when you are selling the project, you are asking, per unit price. Yes, it's an approved project, you're entitled to ask, but you may be lucky and get some sucker who doesn't know what they're doing. But I have seen many projects in life, and I mean, like I said, I just saw three projects last week where these guys have overcommitted to the town. Their interest rate was very high, so you couldn't use their approval as is. You have to go back to the town and seek some relaxation. You really need to present the case to the bank, to the right bank with your leverage, and get the right rate. Because if you use, they say, oh, we have a shovel ready project and it's ready to go. You take the project, you start tomorrow, but you don't realize it that they have lots of commitment to the city or the town. And if you build it that way, you can then make money. And so now they're asking lots of money. They bought the project for 100,000, got it approved, and they're looking for $1 million because they want to get overnight rich, without realizing that they actually overspend doing engineering and development and all that, and then they, over forecasted, and they overcommitted, and their interest rates are bad. With all those things together, and now they already started, enjoying a lifestyle, because they had, they had money from one project, and they were using that money to, pay themselves very, healthy income. And what's happening, the project is getting burdened, and unfortunately these projects going to go under, and then they will be on, on sale by a bank, or whatever. So this is how the short sale and, the bank possession comes into play. But if you want to really be a very, successful, smart entrepreneur, you first make sure that you do not, over forecast your revenue. That's number one. Number two, you realize your actual, delivery and product cost. And not only delivery and product cost, but the entire supply chain, including legal and HR and all the other marketing and, sales cost. You got to figure all that out. And then you also need to make sure that when you get the approvals of that project, and whether or when you're committing to a customer, make sure you do not overcommit. Because whether that is to a city or a town or to your customer, at the end, you cannot overcommit. And even when you're dealing with the bank, you cannot overcommit, because I've seen people overcommitting to the banks as well. So make sure you don't overcommit. And then last but not least, stay humble. Because if you don't stay humble and you're overspending, what's going to happen? You are putting burden on your liabilities, and you are increasing your liabilities, and you unfortunately have to sell that project, and you may not be able to even recoup your expenses. So for that reason, I just want to reassure you and reemphasize that if you are an entrepreneur and you're starting a project, you just make sure that you look at all those pitfalls and all those liabilities that are coming in your way, and so you can make success instead of setting yourself for a failure. So with this, I just, we'll continue this discussion and look at some, other examples and case studies where you need to be careful of, be careful of all these pitfalls so that you do not turn your opportunities to challenges. Make sure you turn challenges to opportunities by keeping an eye on these pitfalls. So instead of turning your challenges turning your opportunities to challenges. So hopefully, we keep learning from each other. I hope that we share our failures and our pitfalls so we can learn from it. With all that, God bless you all, and until next time, enjoy your life.